One essential piece of equipment that every player character should carry? A bunch of Molotov cocktails. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. I started gaming with original Dungeons and Dragons, not the basic or anything like that. Started with the original 3 books. And in Men in Magic, on page 14, you have a flask of oil costs 2 gold pieces. And then the interesting one is in Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, on page 15, in the center of the page is an interesting line: burning oil will deter many monsters from continuing pursuit. From the very first starts of Dungeons and Dragons, burning oil and Molotov cocktails were common. And I was wondering, why isn't that as common today when you start off? It's real simple. That the original Dungeons and Dragons had a lot of restrictions on what class you could be if you chose to be other than human. That restriction was lifted, and people picked other races rather than human, and mostly because they had dark vision. But if you've got mainly human characters, which is when I started, why would you want to have an elf or a dwarf? Because you were limited how high you could advance and what classes you could be. So they were very specialized types of fighters and characters. And you would have a elf in the party. You would never have a party of mainly non-humans, because the humans that had all the advantages. And so you always had torches. And that's the argument why you don't have Molotov cocktails, because they go, well, how do I light them? Well, when you've got a torch, you pull your Greek fire grenade and light it off the torch that you're carrying. So it's not an issue. Or you throw the Molotov cocktail, and then or the Greek fire grenade, and then you throw the torch. You light it, and then you can light another torch later. So what happens is that it becomes really quite simple. You always had fire because you always had somebody with torches in the party lighting the way. And that's the major difference from that and today. Now, the Molotov cocktail has some wonderful advantages, is that it's an area effect weapon. Almost everybody could do it. You had every character would carry a few. We sort of came up with the numbers that I was batting around with. It was a Molotov cocktail held about 12 ounces of oil or whatever in a jar that weighed about 4 ounces. And if you take a look, there's a picture of some Byzantine hand grenades. These go back several hundred years, back into the Middle Ages and so on. And what happens is that there's the interesting argument of how old they go. We talk about the Greek fire, and we knew that they also, besides that they built something like a flamethrower, but they also used it in handheld missiles that were thrown and would crack and expose that. Now, Greek fire is more than just oil. I will grant you that. You go looking for that, and that would be one that you didn't need an explosive, because there was arguments that Greek fire would set fire with water or various things like that. But you could also set fire to with a fire. But flaming oil, and I've heard are interesting arguments that but the oil was only lamp oil and so on. But they had other things going way back to the ancient Greeks. They had things that burnt more freely. And the other question was, is you always had, if you're not carrying a torch, you could carry a lantern, and that was when you started out as a first level character, you'd pick up a couple of torches because they were dirt cheap. And then later on, you'd buy a lantern, and then you'd buy a bullseye lantern, which cost even more because that would focus the light only in one direction because it was an enclosed lantern. But in worst case, you throw the lantern at the monsters. Now I went looking and found a couple of different. Someone, I'll put the link down in the description, said, how do you fit it into the 5th edition? Well, there's some optional rules on the DMG on page 267, and someone said, why don't you make it a firebomb? Just call it a firebomb. Takes 1 action to use. It does 2d6 fire damage with a range of 60 feet. Everything within 5 feet of the target needs to make a 12 dex save, and on an unsuccessful save, the target receives 1d6 damage for the next 3 rounds and must spend 1 action to extinguish. On a successful save, the target only takes half damage from 2d6. But what do you think? I'd like to hear your comments. I think all the characters in the party should probably be carrying Molotov cocktails or Greek fire hand grenades, whichever you want to call them. Molotov cocktails are the more common term, but that's dated to basically World War II. But the Greek fire hand grenade goes way back. So you can call it either whatever. We have a good idea. It's a flask of oil. And that they even made if you go searching through the archaeological evidence, there were actually ones that were designed specifically to fragment and crack, that they were scored for breakage. So we know that that's what they use them for. Is all your characters in your party, are they all carrying flasks of oil to burn things with? Thank you. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate all your comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give me a thumbs down. I appreciate both forms of feedback. If you're new here and would like to subscribe, you can click on the icon on the left. If you're interested, there's more content on the right.